All right, so we're almost there. We're now in the position to finish off our app, and the main thing that we want to do here is to allow users to view other people's feeds. So there's a bit of new stuff here, so you might want to decide you've done enough Googling and figuring stuff out for yourself and just watch the video, which is absolutely fine, but I'll warn you about what's coming and you can choose which bits you'd like to do yourself. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new activity, and then you can tap on any of these users to jump to that activity and view their feed. So you've seen that we've changed the title there as well, so that we're seeing A's feed in the title. So that's reasonably straightforward. We've then added the ability to log out. So that just logs the user out and then jumps back to the Instagram login page or the main activity. So again, not too tricky. I'll just create a new user and sign us back in again. Oh, can't do that one. There we go. And finally, of course, the main thing is if we tap on a user that's actually posted something, then we view their feed. Now that's going to require two quite tricky things. We're going to need to go over to parse and download the images. You can see I've got a couple there now, and you're going to need to wrestle a little bit with ACL. I won't spoil the surprise as to what you need to do there, but see if you can figure it out for yourself, and we'll get there obviously in the video. The final challenge will be that you need to create image views for each of these images programmatically. Now that's something that's not that tricky to do, but again, it's something that we haven't covered yet. So feel free to give it a Google and see if you can figure it out. But if not, don't worry, just watch the video and I'll show you how. So best of luck. Hope it goes well. Go for it. All right, I hope you managed to make a good fist of that. I'm going to start by adding our new activity to show the user's feeds. So we'll do that over in Java and right click or control click and new activity and blank activity. I'm going to call this user feed and we'll change it there as well. And we'll make the parent the user list. So that means we can use the nice back button to go back to user list when we finish looking at that user's feed. Okay, I'm not going to make any customizations other than getting rid of the text view to this part for the moment, because first I'm going to set up the transition from user list to user feed. So remember, what we want is for the user to be able to click on any of these usernames and to then be able to view their feed. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to create an intent to jump to the user feed activity and then know which user has been tapped on. So let's do that over in user list. And we'll do this here just after the user list has been created. And you may or may not remember that we're going to use userlist.set on item click listener. So this just sets an on item click listener which listens for a tap on one of the items within the list view. And we want a new on item click listener. There we go. And then here is where we write our code to jump to the new activity. So that is of course an intent. We'll call it I, which is going to be a new intent within the application context. And we're going to jump to the user feed dot class. There we go. We also want to get the username of the user and put that into this intent. So we'll use I.put extra, and then we'll call it username. And remember, we've got this usernames array here, which keeps track of the usernames that have been added to the list view. So we can just use usernames.get. And then the one that we want is the one that was tapped on, which is given to us by the position here. So that variable tells us which item on the table was tapped. And then we just start that activity. Awesome. So for now, I'm just going to make it so that it displays the username that was passed to the user feed activity in the logs, just so that we know that everything's connected up correctly. So we create an intent I once again, but this time we use get intent to get the intent that caused this activity to start running. And then I'm going to create a string active username, which is going to be equal to I.get string extra and then username. So this returns the username string that was passed to this activity through the intent. And then for now, we'll use log.i and app info and active username. There we go. So let's give that a try. We should find that we can now tap on one of the users in the table, and that username will then be sent to the logs, and we'll jump to the new activity as well. Here we go. So I'll just do my search for app info and a load of stuff there from our previous runnings. But if we then tap on, say, A and all the T's, there it is. So we've jumped to user feed and we've got the user's name in the logs. Brilliant. One other thing that I'd like is to actually see the user's name in the title here. And that's actually really easy to do. We just use set title and then put whatever we want there. So I'm going to use active username, and then we'll have '(s) and feed there. And that just makes it a little bit more useful. Rather than having a generic user feed, we can actually see in the app itself who we've tapped on. Let's just check that that's worked. So ASD's feed. Wonderful. All right, so now we've got the mechanism to get onto the user feed activity now. We now want to actually view a user's feed. So if we just remind ourselves what the user feed looks like, over in Pass, we've got an image here and a username. So we're going to want to be able to tap on the ASD username to view their feed. And to do that, we really need to be able to change users. And that's something that we need to have in our app anyway. So let's first create a logout system so that we can change users. And that's pretty easy to do. We'll do it so that the item appears not in user feed, but in user list up here. So next to the share button. So that's going to be down here in the user list menu. So here's the code that creates the share button. I'm just going to copy that and replace it with a logout button. So we've got share and logout now. And then we need to go back to user list. And if we scroll down, you'll remember that the on option as item selected is the method that's called every time a menu item is tapped on. So at the moment, we've only got code for share. So let's add some code for logout. So let's first do a check to see if the ID is equal to r.id.logout. So then we want to log the user out. And to do that, we use the very simple pass user dot logout. And then we just want to redirect them to the main activity here, which remember is the login page. So that's easy enough. We just create an intent I, which is a new intent using our application context, and then jumping to main activity.class. And then we don't need to pass any information to that, so we just use start activity and I. Simple as that. So that will then, when the user taps the logout button, it will log them out of Parse and jump them straight over to the main activity page so that they can log back in or sign up as someone else. So let's check and make sure that that's all working okay, and we'll create a new user as well. Here we go. So let's tap logout, and it jumps us straight back to our really nice Instagram login screen. Brilliant. So I'll just create a random user, GGG, and sign them up. And now we've got our ASD user here. So if we tap on them, it jumps over to their feed, but of course we don't actually have anything to look at there. So this is the final major challenge here. So let's go over to our userfeed.java file and write the code for that. Okay, so first off, we're going to need to get the information about this user's feed from the Parse database. So we'll need a query. So Parse query on Parse objects. We'll call it query. And it's going to be a new Parse query on Parse object on the class images. The one thing that we want to check is that the username of the images that we're looking at is equal to the username that we've just tapped on. So that's query.where equal to, and we want to check that the username is equal to the active username, which remember is the variable that I used to store the username that was tapped on. I'm also going to add there query.order by descending, and I'm going to use this to get the items in date order with the newest ones first. So we could either use created at or updated at. We're not going to be updating our images, so it doesn't really make much difference, but I'll go for created at. So that will just make sure that we get the newest ones first. All right, now we run our query. So query.find in background, and then we want a new find callback, just as we've done before. So this code will be run when this query is complete. So I'll first do a check to see if E is null, so if there are no exceptions. And I'll also do a check to see if we've actually got some objects. So if objects.size is greater than 0, then we've actually got something. All right, and if we have, then we want to loop through those objects. So we're going to do that using for, and then we'll create a parse object called object for each item within the objects list. So this is a list of parse objects that was returned from this query. Okay, and the main thing that we now need to do is download the image file. Because when you query an item that has a file in it, the file is not actually downloaded automatically, which makes sense because you could have a huge bunch of images here and you might just want to get information about them rather than forcing the user to download them, which may take a very long time. So all that's downloaded is some information about this image file. We need to actually instruct Parse to download the file itself. And we do that using parse file to create a file, and that's going to be cast to a parse file from object.get and then image. So once again, image is the file here, so we're just getting that particular variable. But remember, this isn't the file itself, it's just essentially a pointer to it that we can then use to download it from Parse. So to do that, we take our file and we get data in the background. And as you may guess, we're going to need a new get data callback. So this will happen when the file has been downloaded or hasn't been, if there's been a problem. So let's just check first of all if there's no exceptions, then we're probably okay to continue. Then we need to get the image in some way. You'll notice that once again we've got a byte array here rather than an image format. So we need to start by converting that into an image. So we'll create a bitmap variable, which I'll call image. And we create that from bitmap factory.decode byte array. And then we want to give it 3 variables. The first is the information or the byte array itself. So that's data. The second is, as you can see here, the offset, which is a number that we put in case you've got a header. So it might be that the first 10 bytes of your data don't refer to the image itself, but a header or some information about that image. That's not the case for us, so we can just put a 0 in there and we'll start decoding the byte array right from the beginning of the file. And then we need to give it the length. So that's just data dot length. So the length of the array, essentially. All right, so now we've got our image. So we're really on to the final challenge, which is displaying that image in our activity. So if we go over once again to our user feed, we're not going to be able to assign it to a particular image view because we don't know how many images we're going to need. It might be that there's just one, it might be that there are 20 images here. So we can't create a huge number of image views just in case they're going to be needed. Well, we could, but that wouldn't be a very good way to solve the problem. So what I'm going to do is add a vertical linear layout to our app here. And I'll just do that within our relative layout. And then this is just going to contain all of the images, one beneath the other. Later on, you might well want to advance that a little bit and use a grid layout or something a bit fancier rather than just having one below the other, but I'll leave that up to you. For now, we're just going to keep it simple and have one image below all the others. So let's give this an ID. I'll just call it linear layout. And then we're going to write some code that creates an image view within our linear layout. So let's do that over in user feed. So first of all, I'll need to be able to refer to the linear layout. So I'll create it as a variable up here. Whoops. There we go. I'll just call it linear layout. And then in the onCreate method, I'll link it up to that particular linear layout. r.id.linear layout. Okay. Now over here, we're going to create an image view, which I'll just call image view. And we're going to create that so that we can add it to our linear layout. And so this is just going to be a new image view with the application context. So get application context. Then I'm just going to set a couple of settings for the image view. The first is to set the image itself to this bitmap that we've created, which has been downloaded from Parse. So we do that using image view.set image bitmap, and then image is our image bitmap. Now that would be enough, but I'm just going to very quickly show you how you can change the layout settings. So you might want to do all sorts of different borders or sizes or whatever you want. You would do that using image view.set layout params. Params short for parameters there. And then we want a new set of layout params. And we don't want the action bar here. We're creating an item within a view group. So we use viewgroup.layout params. And then you put all of your layout parameters in here. So for example, you might want viewgroup.layout params.match parent. You might also want viewgroup dot layout params dot, let's try and spell that right, wrap content. So I'm going to have those two, but you can put any ones that you like in there, and they've all got a very similar name to what they have in the XML itself. So all of these kind of settings here you can set in that way. All right, so now that we've set up our image view, all that remains is to add it to our linear layout, and we do that using linear layout dot add view, and then the view that we want to add is image view. There we go. Simple as that. So while that's running, I'll just recap what we've done there. We've started off by creating a parse query, and we're searching the images class for any image which has a username equal to the one that we tapped on, and then ordering it by the created date, so the uploaded date essentially. Then we're running that query, checking to see that it's returned some values, and if it has, then we're grabbing the parse file from that, and we're loading that parse file, we're downloading that parse file from parse to the user's phone. We're checking to see whether there's an error there. If there isn't, then we're creating a bitmap image from that data, and then we're creating an image view. We're setting the bitmap image that we created to that image view, setting some layout parameters, and then finally adding it to the linear layout. Right, so let's give it a quick test. Obviously, there's not going to be any results for anything other than ASD. Unfortunately, when we tap on ASD, we don't actually get any results, which is a bit of a frustrating outcome, but not one that is not without an interesting conclusion. So let's see what's happened there. We need to go over to this mysterious field ACL that we haven't looked at before. ACL stands for Access Control List, and it's a very important setting if you want something that's been created by another user to be accessible by a different user. So by default, anything that's created by this particular user, who is I think ASD, is only going to be accessible, so only viewable and editable by that particular user. So if you want that not to be the case, as we do here, you can double click on there and you can see we can set up public read and write access for that particular object. Now there's no reason that the public need to be able to write to that object, so let's just set public read access. There we go. And just to convince ourselves that that was the problem, let's just run it again and see, with any luck, it should now work. So ASD, and there's our Homer. Wonderful. Okay, you're probably thinking though, you don't want to have to log into the database every time and set the public read access manually. You certainly don't. And there's a much better way of doing that. So let's go back over to our userlist.java, which is where the file or the image is uploaded in the first place, and see how we can change the access for this particular object to give it public read access. So here we go. This is where we create the object. We put in a username and the image. So let's change the access control list right here. We do this by creating a new parse ACL variable, which I'll just call parse ACL. And that is a new parse ACL. And then we set the options of that parse ACL. So in our case, we want to set public. And then we set the options of that parse ACL. So in our case, we want to set public read access. You can see that we can do all sorts of things if you want to have complex setups with read access and write access, but we're just going to keep it simple and have public read access being true. And then we just set the object to have that ACL. So set ACL and then parse ACL. All right, so now we're basically done. And let's just do a complete check to make sure that that does indeed work. We'll upload a new image with our new user. So share, and let's have the Google logo this time. There we go, that's nice and fast. And then let's just jump over to pass to make sure that that's worked. There we go. So here's our new image, and you can see this time it has public read access without us having to do anything. So that's under the GGG username. So let's just log ourselves out and sign up again. HHH maybe. And then if we tap on GGG, then we should view their image straight away. Fantastic. So that's it in terms of what I'm going to show you for this app. We've recreated all the basic Instagram features, which is to be able to view the users and then share images, log out and log back in again, create new users, log in existing users, and of course, view specific users' feeds. Now, there's a lot that could be done to extend this app. One thing would be to look at the layout of the images. A big long list isn't going to be great for viewability, so you might want to use a grid view and display two side by side, for example. You might want to allow the user to post some text along with their image and then display that text. Next to the image, you might want to display the date that the image was posted as well. And I'm sure if you want to take the app further, there's a lot more that you can think of doing as well. But that's as far as we're going to go. Congratulations on making your first sort of big pass app, your Instagram clone. I hope you enjoyed it, so go and take a break, drink a cup of tea, and come back and we're going to attempt another big app, which is Uber.